Welcome to Manifest This, Believer versus Skeptic. I'm Sharon, your resident skeptic who asks all the tough questions. And with me is Jennifer Neal, our manifesting maestro. Whether you're rolling your eyes or raising your vibration, we dive into all things manifestation, mindset, and energy from every side. Hit subscribe, settle in, and get ready for spirited debates, surprising experiments, and laughter on the journey to creating a life you love. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Manifest This, Believer versus Skeptic. So, folks, today we're going to talk more around business. We've been getting feedback from our listeners where there's been more interest in, as mature women, Jennifer and I, and the experience that we brought to the table. So, we thought we might bring manifestation to a conversation on identity and trust and manifestation in business. Jen, how are you today?
I'm great, great, great. I'm excited to dive into this because I have a lot of followers on LinkedIn. I think this is going to be appropriate for LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I've been very active in LinkedIn, but I think sometimes this idea of manifestation and the law of attraction is lost for the business community, and it couldn't be more relevant. So I'm excited to dive into this for the business community and excited to see where this goes.
And by the way, we are not sponsored by LinkedIn, so it's just happens to be a business tool that we both use. So Jen, what do you want to open with?
Well, I think the biggest thing from posting, interacting, and actually also working with a lot of, in my case, they were consultants. And one of the biggest complaints that used to come up was, I'm posting, I'm commenting, I'm showing up, but I'm not seeing any traction. And so I wanted to open with this. If you feel invisible on LinkedIn, specifically on LinkedIn, we're talking about business social media platforms, and LinkedIn is the
big
biggest.
one.
Obviously, it's the big one. It's probably not because you're not good enough. It's not because you're not smart enough. And it's not enough. Well, it could be because you're not posting enough. But for those of you that are posting and you're really giving it a solid effort. And when I say a solid effort, I mean at least once, but ideally 2 to 3 times a week. And you're not seeing traction. It's probably because your identity signal is unclear.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a really bold opening because from where I sit, a lot of people think that the issue is algorithms or timing or hashtags, or maybe not just posting enough video.
Well, I do think, as I said, I do think there could be an element of that. If you're not posting, see you later. Like you have to have a presence in life to get anything out of life, right? But so, I think what you're talking about are tactics. Like algorithms matter. If you start searching rainbows and you start liking rainbow posts, guess what's going to show up in your feed tomorrow?
Sure.
More rainbows. So the algorithm is real. But for the most part, you're talking about tactics. What's happening right now on LinkedIn is deeper than tactics. It's about trust. And trust isn't built through hacks. It's built through coherence. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. So let's ground this in reality for just a minute. So obviously, LinkedIn has become a place where real business happens. Deals, partnerships, hiring decisions, all of it. People check your profile before they might even reply to your email. So people are scanning, I think, for one thing. Do I understand who this person is and what they stand for?
Exactly. And I'm going to tell you, my personal experience with LinkedIn is very powerful. Several years ago, when I was selling a different offer, I started really actively working LinkedIn in a very professional, strategic way. Within 5 months, I built a pipeline of $1.5 million worth of deals. Okay. So when you say deals happen on LinkedIn, there ain't no lying about that. Okay. But what we're talking about, you're right. Like what we're talking about is, do I understand who this person is and do I understand what they stand for? Who are you? What do you do? And why should I care? Those are the 3 things I used to talk about all the time when I was coaching. And energetically speaking, that scan happens in seconds. So in manifestation language, we would say, you're always broadcasting who you believe you are. In business language, we would say, You're always signaling credibility or confusion. It's the same idea.
Okay, and I would probably add that confusion is expensive on a couple of fronts. If I don't immediately understand what you do, how you think, where you're going, and oftentimes maybe what you're trying to sell me, which can be very frustrating in the LinkedIn environment because we don't want to be constantly sold to all the time, then I move on. Not because you're necessarily a bad person, but because I'm busy and I might
Well,
not be ready to entertain a sales conversation. But what's important to me, as you're saying, I think, is tell me who you are. Tell me what value you bring to me and what my value is to you beyond a wallet spend.
I mean, there's so much in here, Sharon. We could do a whole podcast on how to use LinkedIn and how to use it as a sales tool. Listen, I spent 2.5 years coaching consultants on how to build pipeline. And
Yep.
we used LinkedIn as a tool, as the door opener. When you say confusion is expensive, sure it is. But you know how many people are out there just mucking about? They're not serious. They complain about their business. They are drowning in debt. They wish for a business or a consultancy that did better than it does right now, but they're not getting serious about it and they're not prepared to put themselves out there. And before I go to that, I just want to say Gary Vaynerchuk, I'm a big fan of his, as many of you know. Gary Vaynerchuk wrote an amazing book several years ago called Jab, Jab, Hook. It's old now. It's got to be over 10 years old, but it's still relevant. And the idea with it was you got to give, give, give before you ask for the sale. So content, 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 ask. Content, 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 ask. And now I believe it's probably even 10 to 1.
Right.
So nobody wants to be sold,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
there is a way to show up every day, let them get to know you, know your energy, know your power, know your presence, know your confidence through your content, and then start asking for meetings, et cetera, et cetera.
And
But
let's be
again, go ahead.
clear, also know your authenticity. Like, are you
Mhm.
someone I want to be connected to? Do we have a similar way of showing up and offering who we are to other people as well? Like, to me, that's one of the most
Totally.
important aspects. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So the core idea that we're going to talk about today is coherence. And what does that mean? So people aren't responding to your content, they're responding to your self concept.
Right.
So if you think about the people that you love to read, watch, listen to, usually it's because the folks that you're listening to are not only confident, but they're coherent. Okay.
Right.
So if your posts are confident, but your bio is vague, and again, we could go down a rabbit hole on how to create a strong bio, but we're not going to do that. That's incoherence. If your content is inspirational, but your offers are weak, that's incoherence. If one week you're bold and the next week you disappear, that's incoherence. So we're really talking about everything has to work together to create the whole of coherency.
Absolutely. And I think from the skeptic lens, of course, this is basic pattern recognition. Humans trust what's predictable, and any inconsistency is going to trigger hesitation. So, I mean, I could see it from the side of it's not mystical, it's very neurological in terms of how human beings think and
Yeah,
trust.
and for sure. And listen, hand up, I am saying I'm guilty of incoherence myself because in the past few years, I've been doing a little business soul searching, trying to figure out where I want to spend the rest of my life in the business capacity. And so I would say I've been showing up with fits and starts, but I'm actually not relying on LinkedIn for my bread and butter right now. So I can afford to be inconsistent. One might say you can never afford to be inconsistent or incoherent. But from a manifestation lens, when your inner identity doesn't match your outer expression, the signal is weak. Okay. So it's not that you're being ignored, it's that you're being filtered out. Does that make sense?
Yes, I mean, so I could see this as we're talking about it in the greater context with, the example that you've given, where you're doing a lot of things, but you haven't quite made something stick yet. But from a LinkedIn perspective, I could see the consistency is required. From an entrepreneurial perspective, you need to take the shots until you get it right as well. Not trying at all or over planning the trying is also problematic.
Yeah, like, go ahead.
So let's now talk about authenticity because I think people misuse that word, right? Authenticity isn't oversharing, it's not emotional dumping. It's really an alignment between what you say, what you believe, and also I think how you show.
Yeah, and I mean, I was just going to say before you went into that segment of authenticity that back to Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary would argue like stop over editing yourself. Forget the camera, forget the lighting, forget the perfect sound, forget all of that. And we're like this guy's a billionaire and he's been showing up on social media for 30 years in all platforms and was an early investor in some of our favorites like Instagram. Gary would say, like, back to your point of being authentic, the more you edit, the more light you add, the more makeup you wear, the more you obsess over the perfect message, you're losing authenticity.
Right.
Sometimes your most authentic post is open up the camera, like I quite often do, and go, blah, 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 blah. These are my thoughts. And there really are my thoughts because I haven't had a chance to put on makeup. I think real authenticity lies in the unedited self. And the more you show up unedited, raw, wrong, maybe, loud, maybe, controversial, maybe, that is where you're going to get the good. That's where law of attraction sits because that's the real unfiltered you. And if we saw a lot more of that on LinkedIn, I think we would be laughing. So exactly, authenticity works because alignment is then legible. Okay? You can feel when someone is being your word performative. You can feel when someone is posting what they think they should post, not what they really feel or want to post. And you can tell when someone is chasing engagement instead of resonance. And LinkedIn's audience, they're no dummies, especially decision makers. Yeah, that's what I would say about authenticity on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and I think decision makers are also risk averse. They want grounded, stable, self aware people. And I think, based on what you've been saying too, yeah, show up in your raw self. But I would add this caveat, if I add any at all, and that would be show up with grace and kindness. Because it's one thing to show up authentically, it's quite another to do it with a semblance of grace and kindness as well. So I just would want to add that in.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, listen, as I said, we could go down a total rabbit hole on how to leverage LinkedIn. We're not going to do that today, but any decision maker, I don't care how big they are, if you know what they might be struggling with and you have the solution to that and you come in all guns a-blazing with confidence, the biggest decision makers in the world will turn their head and say, holy smokes, how do you know what I'm struggling with right now? How are you that smart? So there's so much in this, but turning back to manifestation, why manifestation works in business is often related to when you're framed correctly. So you're not manifesting clients, you're not manifesting business or money. You're becoming, there's that word again, you're becoming someone that clients can trust.
Okay, help us reframe this a little bit.
Okay. So the manifestation principle, let's go back to basics. The manifestation principle is this. You don't attract what you want, you attract who you are. And I would add to that what you're vibrating at, the frequency you're emitting, the energy you're putting out there. That's all the manifestation definitions, right?
Okay,
LinkedIn, any platform, but LinkedIn is just making that visible.
sure.
So, oh, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think from the business principle perspective, markets are going to reward clarity, confidence. And to me, this is one of the most important aspects that often gets ignored: consistency. Be your
Same.
word.
Yeah.
Same thing, different language, but yeah, be your word.
Yeah. Again, you don't attract what you want. I want $1 million business. I want a $1 million business. I want $1 billion business. That's great. Good for you. Woohoo. You attract who you are. Are you acting like a billionaire? Are you acting like a millionaire? Do you do the actions of a successful multi-million-dollar business? Okay. So when your identity settles into this, your content becomes easier. It really does, because now you know you've got an offer. The offer feels cleaner, and your posting stops becoming performative. It becomes what you would do if you were who you say you are.
Yeah, I think one of the things I find rather interesting in our discussions, and it's not to say one way is better than the other, not at all, but often what resonated with me in terms of being a trusted advisor and in what I did was helping clients with a problem and bringing them through to the finish line. And yes, I had quotas and had to make certain numbers, but for me, that was never front and center, much to the chagrin, I think, of the people who oversaw those numbers. The numbers for me followed, but it wasn't my driver. And that just could be the way that I show up differently and authentically. So I think what I'm saying to listeners is take a piece of what you feel resonates with you out of what it is we're talking about and just be authentic to the piece that resonates for you. And people will start responding because you're no longer asking them to figure you out. You've got you figured out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about giving
Yeah.
us some of those micro exercises you like to give us, a little bit of homework, let's say?
Love this. Okay, so let's do something practical. So if you're listening to this, I want you to pause. I want you to pause all your multitasking and your bright, shiny objecting right now. I'm a bright, shiny object person, so I need this. Just for a second, okay? And so I have recently done this with myself, and I'm going to out myself here a little bit, but I'm going to ask you a series of questions. I want you to write these down, okay? Who am I being on LinkedIn right now? Really? Not who you want to be, but who you're actually showing up as. For example, I'm showing up every now and again. I don't know what to say. I'm scared. I feel like I'm getting in people's way. I feel like I'm wasting their time. Like, really be honest with how are you showing up on LinkedIn right now? And maybe even more generally in business. How do you show up right now at your desk? How are you showing up?
Okay.
Number 2, is that version confident, clear, and congruent? Or is it cautious and fragmented? Think about that.
Okay.
Number 3, if someone read 5 of my posts in a row, would they know what I stand for? That's big. And
Right.
number 4, what am I trying to prove? And what would happen if I stopped? And I'm going to say for 90% of you, nothing would happen if you stopped because you're not doing anything. I'm telling you, I know who you are. I know what's going on out there. But here's the sidebar to this. So we've been talking about identity work a lot, and maybe actually we do the next episode on this, Sharon. We've been talking about identity work a lot, and willpower will only get you so far. You can say, I'm going to work out every day. You can say, I'm going to post every day. You can say, I'm going to make 5 outbound phone calls every day, but your willpower eventually is going to run out. But if you change your identity, that will never run out.
Mm-hmm.
So I've recently built a new identity for myself, and her name is Jenny Brandwood.
Okay.
And Jenny Brandwood, the name Jennifer obviously is where Jenny comes from, and the name Brandwood comes from my mother's maiden name, which is Brandwood. And Jenny Brandwood does things that Jennifer Neal would not do. Jenny Brandwood does things because she is a certain person and characteristic and personality that Jennifer Neal is not. And so I have built out now, and I continue to build out, and we can talk about this in the future if there's interest, how to build out an identity to get all the things you say you want. And this can be very helpful when you are building a business. And I'll give you the quick and dirty side of this. We can talk about Jenny Brandwood in the next podcast if you like. But if you look at someone you really admire in business, let's say it's Tony Robbins, for example. I watched a show on him last night. He owns 114 businesses. He is a billionaire. And you say, I want to be like Tony Robbins. I want to be a billionaire. Well, look at what Tony Robbins does. Do you think Tony Robbins ever opens up his phone and is shy or insecure about posting what he believes in on LinkedIn? Not a chance. So identity work, I believe, is where it's at. it's not a new topic. It's kind of flying around everywhere right now. But if you can really build a different identity, all the questions I just asked you about how you're showing up on LinkedIn will change. Because if you start acting from, remember we said it's not what you want, it's who you are. Who are you? Who are you being? And if we change the concept of who you are, you're going to show up differently in life, period. I don't care whether it's business or personal, relational. I don't care. You'll show up differently.
So a couple thoughts with everything that you said. When you said Jenny Brandwood, and you said Brandwood was your mom's maiden name, what I actually heard, and I thought, oh, that's clever because you've done brands and it's what you would do. So I thought these are Brandwoods. That's where I went when you came up with that name.
Oh my gosh, that is brilliant.
So I think they're
I kind of don't
subtly
know what
there.
to say right now. Like, I kind of don't know what to say right now. If I was ever wondering whether or not that was the right alter ego for me, the name for my alter ego, you just nailed it. Like, slam dunk.
And I think the other thing I would add to your questions is really, this is me sort of coming back to that side. Would I trust this person with a decision, a referral, or a budget based solely on their presence? Because let's be frank, we do business with people we like. And that like comes from all kinds of different things. But it's also, this is someone else trusts. This is someone who I feel a connection with. This is someone who exudes confidence and trust and honesty. So, yeah, I would like to do business from them. And I think that's another thing to ask ourselves are, would we trust ourselves if we faced ourselves with a decision, a referral, or a budget based on our own presence? No judgment. It's just data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Because the moment that you're totally right. Like sometimes, when you meet someone, you're like, gosh, I really like them, but I don't know why. Or you meet someone, you're like, you and I are going to be best friends, like forever and a million. Like you and I, really. Like when we met each other back in our 20s and our
Yeah.
bosses forced us,
Yes. To go
forced
for lunch.
us to go for lunch because my boss wanted to win what your boss had won the previous year, which was Entrepreneur of the Year, female Entrepreneur of the Year. Your boss won it and my boss wanted it. So she said, get together with Sharon and find out what we have to do to become this. Anyway, yeah. But you and I both knew from the moment we met each other, this was going to be a lifelong relationship. And
Yeah. And
I'm
here
so
we are.
grateful. And here we are.
And
But you're right.
what your boss missed was, I was the trusted person who wrote that.
I know. And I tried to write it, but I was never as good as you.
Toot my own horn for just a microsecond.
Totally. 100%. But getting back to the topic, the moment you shift your identity, the moment you really decide who and what you want to be, your behavior will automatically follow.
Yeah.
And so I think our next episode might be on identity work because I think it's so valuable in everything, in love, in business, in money, in finance, in relations, in family, in health. I think those are the big topics. And in mental health and in spirituality, I think, who do you want to be?
Right, right. So I guess where we're at now is if LinkedIn feels heavy or awkward or not really rewarding right now, the answer is not more tactics.
It's coherence.
Yeah.
It's consistency. It's coherence. When you are what you say you are and how you show up matches that, you're laughing. So opportunities will stop feeling like you're chasing them and they will start feeling inevitable when you figure this stuff out, folks.
Right. And it's not magic, it's simply alignment.
It is. And it's a little bit of work, but in my opinion, it's fun work. Like, who doesn't want to build a new identity? Like, come on.
Right. Well, that's great. Thanks, Jennifer. This was a fun little business podcast. We're going to bring you one of these every month just to give a little bit of a taste of the business side of manifestation. So it feels perhaps a little bit less woo-woo and a little bit more authentic. Jen, we'll talk to you next week and have a good week, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Manifest This, Believer versus Skeptic. If you enjoyed today's conversation, share it with a friend, believer or skeptic. And don't forget to leave us a review so others can join in the debate. Plus, check out Jennifer's TikTok account, Manifestation RX, where she writes daily prescriptions for manifesting your dreams. Think practical tips with a dash of magic. We love hearing your questions and stories, so tell us what you're manifesting or questioning this week. Until next time, keep an open mind and maybe manifest a little magic.